So I am the creator of Foundation Comparative Worldview curriculum, and it's an apologetic and comparative worldview resource for elementary aged students. So what we do is we basically combine sound apologetics with sound educational philosophy so that we're actually working in the way that God designed kids' brains to learn, so that we're actually transforming the way that they think. Well, with the way that God designed kids' brains to learn, there's a couple things that we need to make sure that we have included in any instruction. Number one, we have to make sure that they are the ones that are doing the thinking. So a lot of times what we'll do in any church educational setting is we'll give kids lots of information and then we'll move on and think, okay, they've gotten it. Where what we've done is we've just really told them something without giving them a chance to process it or articulate it themselves or provide a defense. So we really need to make sure that they're the ones doing the thinking. And the second thing is we also need to make sure that we keep coming back and revisiting the same concepts, because brain research has found that young kids really need 7 exposures to the same content before it really clicks. And so a lot of times we'll present them with something and then move on and then wonder why it didn't stick. So basically what we're doing is not just providing good arguments and good information, but we're tailoring it to a way that's really going to align with their brain development and going to transform the way that they think. Well, back when I first started pursuing an interest in apologetics, I couldn't have even put the term apologetics to it. I didn't even know that such a thing existed. I was just teaching 3rd grade at a Christian school, and I saw that the students in my class, they came from these great Christian homes. I was giving them a biblically based education all day long, and most of them were fairly involved in church, but yet they were rapidly absorbing these ideas from the culture without ever questioning anything. And so I started looking for what can I do to get them to critically think through the truth claims of the Christian worldview. And that's when I started reading different apologetic authors and going to conferences, and eventually I learned there was actually a word for what I was passionate about and that it was apologetics. But it was really just seeing this need in the students in my classroom and wanting to meet that need that got me interested in it. So I don't know if there's one particular genre or argument that draws me, but I'm a big picture person. And so one thing that I try to do when I'm working with kids, and that just really draws me also to apologetics, is just how comprehensively the Christian worldview provides the best and most coherent picture of reality. You know, there's still areas where we might have questions or uncertainties, as with any worldview, but when we're comparing, you know, just like the plausibility and the coherence of different worldviews, I just find it so encouraging that Christianity consistently provides accurate explanations of reality, and I love helping kids discover that. Well, that's why I have a curriculum out, because I know that I can't be there to help everybody do this, but the materials I've created can take them by the hand and walk them through actually doing this with children. So I highly recommend that. But then also, just for practical everyday things, just getting good at asking questions, because we really want to get our kids thinking. So rather than constantly giving them information, asking them open-ended questions to ask them what they think about something. Like, for example, is truth a feeling? Or does truth stay the same no matter how we feel about it? And then giving them an opportunity to think through that. Then we could come up with follow-up questions. And just remembering that with our children, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. You know, if they don't have a correct understanding of something right now, we're gonna keep working towards that. But we don't need to shove truth down their throat. We need to get them to be thinking critically and start questioning things on their own. Yes, well, actually, one of my favorite stories was with a student who took this apologetics class that I now have a curriculum for. She took it when she was in 4th grade. And then when she was in 7th grade, her mom texted me one day and said, you know, can you pray for her? She's starting to doubt whether or not God exists. And I said, yeah, I'll definitely be praying for her. Can I also take her out for ice cream? And so she and I went out for ice cream, and we were talking for a bit, and then I said, hey, I hear your mom tells me, you know, you're starting to wonder whether or not God exists. And she kind of hung her head, and said, yeah, I pray all the time and I just don't see God answering my prayers and I don't feel like he's there. And I said, oh, this is so exciting. And she kind of looked at me like I had 5 heads. And I said, you're going to start to really critically think through everything that you've been taught and whether or not it's true. And I said, if you go through this and you decide you don't believe that Christianity is true, and you take off the Christian worldview, you're not just going to have no worldview, you're going to have another worldview. And I said, do you remember what are some of the big questions that worldviews have to answer, that anybody has to answer? And so she thought about it and she went through and started, naming some of the questions. And I said, yeah, do you remember, how does the Bible answer these questions, and how do different worldviews answer these questions? And she's talking and talking. She's very eloquent, and her ice cream is melting and dripping down her arm. And all of a sudden she goes, ah, and I said, what? And she goes, oh my goodness, none of the answers to these questions make sense without God in the picture. Like, I might not feel like God is there, but it makes so much more sense to trust that he is than to just go with my feelings. And I said, isn't that so interesting? And it was so exciting to see that. That's not the end of her faith journey. That's not the last time she's going to question or doubt. But it was just so exciting that, I didn't have to sit down and give her a lecture. I didn't have to, go through this huge long process. I just asked her 2 questions. And because she had had this training and had been trained to think well and learning, how does the Christian worldview explain reality? How do different worldviews explain it? On her own, she was able to realize, oh my goodness, my feelings might not feel like God is there, but when I look at this as a whole, it just makes sense. And so that was just so exciting for me to be a part of.